Welcome to the Shepherd Peace Counseling Ministries. I'm Nathan Clark, and here on our lesson number 6 for healing of the heart, we are going to be looking at living an anxiety-free life. Now, we're going to begin this study in Philippians chapter 4, and what we're going to see is Paul is going to give some exhortation to a group of people, which is this is basically summed up as all Christians. He recognizes in this time in history that these individuals that are helping him to bring forth and build the foundation of the Church of Jesus Christ, that they're going to run into certain difficulties, such as the deep-rooted embedment of the pagan religions that are present there in Greece. And then also he runs into the deep-rooted religious practices of the Jews, and they do not want to give this up. And therefore they too are fighting against Paul and his efforts to promote and build the Church of Jesus Christ. And so he recognizes that these individuals that are helping him are going to become weary and become frustrated and take on certain frustrations in their lives, and he wants to give them something that will help. So let's begin in verse number 1 of Philippians chapter 4 and begin this study right here. Verse 1. Therefore, my brethren, dearly beloved and longed for, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, my dearly beloved. I beseech thee, Eodias, and beseech Syntyche, that they be of the same mind in the Lord. And I entreat thee also, ye yoked fellows, help those women which labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and with others my fellow laborers, whose name are in the book of life. As we see right there, Paul has basically summed up everybody that's a Christian. He's got those that are helping him. He's got those who are helping Clement. He's got the women that are helping to spread the gospel. And then, of course, he sums it up, those whose names are in the book of life, which are those who are called by God to be saved. So that's all Christians. So this exhortation is to you and me. So let's see what Paul has to say to encourage these individuals that are struggling in their walk as a Christian. A Christian walk has its difficulties. A Christian walk can oftentimes be a hardship for promotion at work. A Christian life can be difficult in the amount of friends that we have, the type of friends we have. A Christian walk, it takes on a level of responsibility that can be a burden for some. In this world, the world that we live in is not set up for Christians, but in fact it is set up for quite the opposite. So anytime a man receives Jesus Christ into their life and begins to take on the world, at times that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like they have to take on the whole world by themselves. And this can be very difficult. And Paul recognized this difficulty that would come in trying to battle against human nature itself. And so he's offering some helpful tips, some hopeful information that these individuals and you and I can use today to help us in our battle, to pushing back against the world and still having a solid, peaceful place in this life with Christ. So let's read on. We'll start with verse number 4. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. What Paul is saying right here is this word rejoice is an outward expression of an inward thought. When we think upon God, then we rejoice in God. When we think upon the world, then we rejoice in the world. So what Paul is saying is he's saying, I want you to focus on God. I want you to focus on the Lord and His truth. Focus on God's Word. What is on your mind? And those things that are on your mind, those are the things that you're going to rejoice in. So he's saying, rejoice in the Lord. Think about the Lord. Focus, meditate on the Lord. And then show it. Show an enthusiasm. Rejoice in that. This is going to, our soul, as we've learned, hopefully we've learned, is made up of 3 parts. And it's the mind, which is our intellect. Then we have our heart, which is our convictions, and then our bowels. These are the biblical terminologies, but our bowels are our emotion. So Paul is now addressing, he's coming to these individuals, and he's saying that I have a call for your soul. Your soul needs to be in a certain place. And so the first place that he wants your soul to be is in the area of the mind. He wants your mind focused on God. Those things which we rejoice in are the things that we are thinking about the most. So there's our first place. Second thing, verse number 5. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. He's saying let there be a certain level of restraint. And he's saying you're dealing with the world. As these individuals here are, we do today. When we go out into the world, when we go into the workplace, there's a certain amount of resistance, a certain amount of mockery, a certain amount of hatred towards us, simply because of what we believe and who we believe in to be the only road to salvation. This can be a difficult situation to react to. And sometimes we want to react with aggression, with hostile words, maybe even violence. And Paul's saying, no. Let your heart condition be such that you're going to react with moderation, with self-control, with restraint. And then it says, let it be seen, let be known unto all men. That means let others see that when you're mocked, when you're attacked for what you believe, but yet you respond in a peaceful and a loving way, that others can see that. And this is a condition of our conviction. This is a condition of our heart, that we are convicted and that we know that what we stand on is true. When we're unsure of what we stand on, if we're unsure that Jesus Christ is the only way and then people attack us, it makes us vulnerable to defend our position. People who have to defend themselves to the death, they're not sure about what they're defending. They're more like they're more interested in defending their reputation than the truth what they stand on. But when you stand on solid truth, then you will find you have less need to defend your honor. You have less need to defend yourself. And you're more comfortable in saying, this is what I believe, and you're happy, and you're welcome to believe something different. But that doesn't change where I'm at. And that's a response of moderation. And then we get into the nuts and bolts here in verse number 6. Be careful for nothing, or rather, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer, supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. This is an address on anxiety. Now we're dealing with the area of our emotions. So Paul's laid it out. He's laid out where our mind should be. He's laid the condition of our heart. And now he's laying out the condition of our emotions. And he's saying that we should not, as Christians, as followers of Jesus Christ, there is no reason for us to have fear, worry, and anxiety in our life. But yet we do, because the world brings it. So he's giving us a tool here. He's going to give us a tool that's going to help us conquer, remove this worry and anxiety and fear from our lives. Because it says, be careful for nothing, or be anxious for nothing, but. So instead of the anxiety, we replace it with something else. And so we replace it with prayer and supplication. Now here's the thing about prayer and supplication. When we go, and it's important that we understand this prayer and supplications, it says, but in everything. He's not saying go to God about the important things. He's not saying to go to God only when it's a life or death. He's saying every little thing that you're struggling with, every little bump in the road, every concern that you have, every desire of your heart that you may be struggling with, he's saying go to God and talk about it. Go to him. Discuss this. Now this is like talk therapy. There's just something about getting things out, talking about things that makes us feel better. That's exactly what's happening. The secular world of psychology didn't come up with this first. God did. Paul's saying, you go and pray and bring supplications before God on a regular basis, and it's the same as seeing a therapist on a regular basis. It's talk therapy, getting this stuff out. And Paul's saying that's going to help. But then he didn't. But he also added in there thanksgiving. Now, thanksgiving does something unique, something special that even talk therapy might not do. And that brings a focus on our situation. It brings a clarity about what our life really is. See, when bad things come into our lives, no matter how much good we have, we tend to focus only on that one bad thing. When we sit down and begin to list all the things that God has done to bless us, that bad thing, that thing that we've focused on so much, begins to shrink. And it becomes lighter and less of a burden. And we begin to see all the wonderful things that are still present in our lives. Isn't that true? That no matter how big our life is blessed with, all our bills are paid, a good job, the clothes on our back, food on our table, freezer full of food, and then one thing comes into our life. And next thing you know, everything that we were so grateful for just seems to disappear. And the only thing that we notice is that one thing that we struggle with. This will help lighten that burden. It helps bring a more accurate focus on what our life really is. It's really not all that bad. It does have a bad part, but it's got a lot of good parts too. But Thanksgiving does something else. Thanksgiving brings us into a current state of mind. Our emotions have, or rather our mind has the ability to time travel. If we were a time traveler, there's 3 places that we could go: the past, future, or present. Our mind actually has that ability to travel to the past, the future, or the present. When we're in the past, emotions that are specific just for the past become part of our lives. An emotion such as anger, bitterness, frustration, these are emotions that dwell in the past. So when our mind drifts to things that are already happened, things that we have no control over today, but when we drift back to what that person did to me, I can't believe that they said that about such and such. I can't believe that they said that about me, or they did this to me, or whatever it may be. When we go back to those things that have already happened and we dwell on them, we allow these emotions into our lives. We allow anger and bitterness to become part of our lives. Same way with the future. When we allow our minds to drift to places that haven't happened yet, the unknown. Am I going to get fired? Am I going to get sick? Will I have enough money to pay bills? All these questions, you might say, all these unknowns. When we allow our mind to drift there, then we invite worry, anxiety, and fear into our lives. What we want to do is bring our mind into the here and now. And in the here and now, have emotions such as love, joy, and peace, contentment, happiness. That's where these emotions are found, in the here and now. Because in the here and now, if we are truly in the moment, we will find that there is always a lot more good than there is bad. And it makes it difficult for us to be focused on just the bad when we are able to see clearly all the good as well. But when we allowed our mind to travel from the past to the future, then things become distorted. And in the future, we're focusing on things that haven't happened yet. So how can we count our blessings in the future? Because we don't know if that's going to be a blessing or not a blessing. And the same in the past. How can we count our blessings of the here and now when we're always focusing on the things that are already happened? But when I count my blessings, when I give thanks to God in prayer for what I have right now, for the food that I have in my refrigerator, for the clothes that I have in my closet, for the health that I have in my body, and the list goes on, that brings us to right here and now. And that's therapeutic. That takes me out of all these negative potentials. And that's what Paul has called us to do. He said, be careful for nothing, but in everything in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And here's what comes next. Stay with me. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. The peace of God. Those words are powerful. But you know, as Christians, we hear these words, especially if you grew up in a church. It's from a young age, you hear about this peace of God, even this peace that passes all understanding. I've heard it ever since I was a young person. And we begin to become desensitized and not really think about what that means. But the peace of God, the peace that passeth all understanding, what does that mean? Well, when things are going good, when everything is taken care of, you feel good, your bills are covered, you have no problems in life, it makes sense to the intellect. It makes sense to you and me to feel peaceful. And we do. Everything's going good. And we feel that comfort and that security. But when things start to go bad, it makes sense that we would lose that peace. And we normally do. But see, here's what God's saying. He's saying, if you do this one little aspect, this one little exercise of prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, because a regular prayer life, going to God on a regular basis and having a conversation with Him about your problems, about your wants, whatever it may be, it begins to take your mind, your focus off of this world, and it begins to give you a heavenly focus. See, the things that we think about the most, the things that we invest in the most, tend to be the things that are part of our life the most, the things that we actually get good at. And when I think about my job only, or if I think about my hobbies, then those are the things that are going to start to be good in my life. They're going to be the things that are big in my life. And those things are temporal. Those things will let you down. This world, if it hasn't already, will let you down because it's a fallen, sinful, wicked world. People are going to disappoint you. Employment is going to disappoint you. Life in general, at times, will disappoint you because this world is broken. And so when we make that the focus of our lives, we set ourselves up for failure. We set ourselves up to receive these disappointments into our life. We set ourselves up to receive this worry and anxiety. When's the next disappointment going to come? That makes sense. But when we follow the simple tool of making prayer and supplication with thanksgiving part of our lives on a regular basis, then we begin to put a focus on God. We begin to invest in God and invest in that world. Jesus says that I am not of this world. I am of another world. Jesus had his focus on the kingdom of heaven. And the more we invest and focus on God and the kingdom to come, the less this world can disappoint us. The less this world can let us down. That world to come, the kingdom of heaven to come, it will not let us down. And it is full of hope and joy. And these are the emotions that we're looking for. These are the emotions that purge and remove anxiety from our lives. But as long as we're focused in this world, anxiety has a place. Disappointment has a place. But when we're focused on the world to come, there is no place for those things. And so the peace that passeth all understanding, it's a peace that we can have even when our world is turned upside down. Even when we have lost our job, we can go to bed peaceful and feel secure in our relationship with God and in our life with Him to come. Even when we get the news of illness, the loss of a loved one. These are difficult things to have in our lives, but we can still possess peace. We can still be secure and confident and not be afraid of the next day. Even when our house is being foreclosed on, we can still have peace. And that passes all our human intellectual understanding that makes no sense to us. But when we cultivate and build that relationship with God through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, we bypass our intellectual understanding and begin to receive into our lives a peace and security that makes no sense to us. And then he reads, shall keep your hearts and mind through Jesus Christ. And that's what it's all about. Keeping our intellect, our emotions, and our convictions, protecting them. God will protect your mind from negative thoughts. When God is your focus, when the kingdom of heaven is your focus in life, then God says He will protect your mind from these negative thoughts, that He will protect your heart and your emotions and keep your soul intact in a way that no psychologist, no counselor, no therapist ever could. Only God can bring about that peace and that protection of your soul. And the only thing that He asks for this, the instruction here, is simply go to Him when you struggle and quote and remind yourself of the blessings. Don't just say, oh, I'm thankful for everything you've done, Lord. That's not going to get it. But when you start to list one by one by one, it won't take long before you realize you're going to have to stop somewhere, because the list doesn't end. Boy, it is difficult to be upset and sad and scared and worried when you realize that you are worshiping a God, that you have a relationship with a God that created heaven and earth. And even though difficult times will come into your life, we know that God is right there and He's in control of everything, and we don't have to fear. We don't have to be afraid of what's to come, because God, who had the power to create the cell that dwells in your body, has the power to control the next coming day of your life. Well, thank you for your time, and may God bless you.